A massive fire has destroyed the building that once housed the Sutherland Hotel on Main Street. Well, the building was vacant and boarded up, and for many, likely an eyesore. It holds a rich history for our city. The bones of the building are more than a century old. Local historian Christian Cassidy joins me now. Christian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Christian, the building was opened back in 1882. Tell me a little bit about what was happening in Winnipeg and the significance of this building back then.
Well, yes, the building opened in 1882 as the Cosmopolitan Hotel. And so some of the bones date back to that. A lot of these hotels were expanded to the rear, and a floor was added above over the decades. But the core of the hotel would have been the Cosmopolitan Hotel. And 1882, of course, was the year that the CPR arrived in Winnipeg. So it was kind of the start of the booming prairie town that lasted for a number of decades, the Chicago of the North. All of that kind of started with the arrival of the CPR. So the Cosmopolitan was very tied to the railway. It was so close to the station that many of the first people who lived there were actual CPR employees who were transferred from out west. So probably a majority of the rooms for the first few years were actual railway employees who lived there rather than hotel guests, overnight hotel guests.
So it's really changed names a number of times over the years, and most recently the building, as we said, was boarded up, but it's held a lot of history, as you mentioned here with the railway. It never held heritage status and it wasn't protected. Do you think it should have been? Should we have done more?
I think it had a couple of strikes against it. I think that these older SRO hotels, we look down upon them in the era we live in now. So that's one strike against it, and also where it is. It's in a bad part, the Main Street Strip, bad part of town, and I don't think that the buildings in neighborhoods like that get the same amount of credit as if it would have been, say, one block south. And that's unfortunate. And I think that some of those biases that seem to be built into whether you give heritage protection to certain buildings is unfortunate, and this may have suffered from that.
We talked a little bit about the railway and the significance this hotel played for it, but it's also an important area of town historically for the Black community. Can you touch base on that and what losing these types of buildings mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So Winnipeg's early Black population was very much tied to the CPR and the sleeping car porters that came to town. So a lot of the early Black community were temporary, would be people who would be just here for sometimes a few months at a time, sometimes just a few years, and then they would move on to another depot. And so a lot of the buildings related to that community were stationed in and around the CPR depot. And the building that is right up next to the Sutherland Hotel, which is still standing, and I don't know how badly it was damaged in the fire, is the Craig Block. And that block was built in the 1890s, but in the 1920s, it became home to the Sleeping Car Porters Union. And that was a locally organized union. And some people believe that it's the first Black union in North America because it was created a few years before its American counterpart. And for years, for decades, it had an office in that building. It was joined by other Black organizations, especially from the States. They would open up kind of a branch office here. There was a hall upstairs that was used for different bands and cultural events, and Black-owned businesses on the main floor. And some of these Black organizations remained in this building until the 1980s. And that just is a story, again, I think because of the part of town that it's in and the rundown nature of these two buildings side by side. That story is not really well told, and that's unfortunate because when these buildings burn down, you lose all those stories.
A lot of history now to remind us of where we came and what we can do to maybe protect some other buildings that are in this position. Christian, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.